ordinary voyage. The cruise liner Ocean Spirit left the port of Dubai at 0900 hours, heading for Mumbai, India. The trip was meant to be simple: 4 days at sea, 500 passengers, and a crew of 85. On board were families, tourists, and workers returning home. The ship was large, modern, and secure. No one expected danger. But the waters they crossed were not safe. The Arabian Sea, though beautiful, had become a silent battlefield. In 2026, tensions between Iran and the United States had spilled across trade routes. Pirates, smugglers, and private militias began targeting ships moving oil, weapons, or people. The U.S. Navy had increased patrols, but the ocean is vast, and every patrol has blind spots. For years, the Navy's Fifth Fleet had operated out of Bahrain, covering nearly 2.5 million square miles of sea. Their mission was to protect shipping lanes from piracy and terrorism. But even with drones, satellites, and destroyers, they could not track everything. Some areas remained dark. One of those areas lay just 200 nautical miles from the route of the Ocean Spirit. The ship's captain, Rajiv Menon, had worked the seas for 30 years. He trusted his route and his radar. At 2100 hours, the radar picked up small fishing boats to the north. It was normal. Local fishermen often worked late into the night. But at 2300 hours, something changed. The small dots began to move faster. Their formation tightened. The Ocean Spirit's communication officer tried to hail them. No reply, just static. "Probably local interference," the captain said. But by midnight, that interference grew worse. The ship's GPS flickered, then failed. All coordinates vanished. The crew switched to manual navigation, but even the compass readings drifted. Someone was jamming their systems. Meanwhile, far away in the Gulf, the U.S. Navy destroyer USS Roosevelt was running routine exercises with its carrier group. The crew monitored open frequencies for any sign of distress. Around 0240 hours, a broken signal crackled through. A woman's voice. "Mayday! Mayday! This is the Ocean Spirit! We are—" Then it cut off. The coordinates were incomplete. At that same moment, satellites picked up strange heat signatures near the ship's last known position. Multiple fast-moving boats, each no larger than 20 meters, closing in from 3 directions. Within minutes, contact with the Ocean Spirit was lost. By sunrise, news began to spread. The ship had vanished. Families called authorities. Social media filled with rumors: explosion, hijacking, storm. The Indian Coast Guard launched search planes. Nothing. No oil slick, no debris, no signal. Just empty water. By 1000 hours, the U.S. Navy received a direct order from Central Command: find the vessel. Rear Admiral Thomas Greer, commander of Task Force Trident, activated a full-scale maritime search. He knew time was critical. In hostage cases, the first 12 hours decide life or death. Behind the scenes, intelligence agencies began piecing together fragments. Satellite data showed several unidentified vessels departing a small port in southern Iran the previous night. These boats were fast, armed, and unmarked. Intercepts hinted at a private military group, not pirates, but mercenaries. They called themselves the Crimson Vipers. Their goal wasn't money, it was leverage. They wanted attention, and they knew that taking a ship with Western civilians would do it. What they didn't expect was who would come for them. By evening, the Roosevelt changed course toward the last known signal. The destroyer carried advanced radar, drones, and a full detachment of Navy SEALs. With them was the aircraft carrier USS Eisenhower, capable of launching aircraft and helicopters for deep-sea operations. The Navy was preparing for the worst-case scenario: a hostage rescue in hostile waters. The Ocean Spirit, meanwhile, drifted silently toward an unknown destination. The passengers were forced into the lower decks. The hijackers took control of the bridge, armed with rifles and explosives. Their leader, a man known only as Fareed, made one demand over radio: "Do not follow, or the ship burns. Negotiation was not an option. The U.S. Navy's rules of engagement were clear. Protect civilian lives, avoid escalation, but never allow armed control of international waters. The situation had already crossed the line. For the next 24 hours, the Roosevelt and its task group shadowed the ship from a distance. Using infrared sensors, they confirmed there were still people alive on board, but getting closer meant being detected. The hijackers had anti-air weapons and surface mines placed around the ship. Rear Admiral Greer faced a brutal choice: move in fast and risk killing the hostages, or wait and risk losing them forever. His team analyzed every signal, every thermal reading, every intercepted message. One line repeated again and again: deliver the message. But what message? And to whom? By the end of the second day, intelligence confirmed a terrifying truth. The hijackers weren't after ransom or release. They wanted to broadcast a statement live to the world, using the captured ship as their stage. They planned to execute passengers unless a U.S. carrier group withdrew from the region. The countdown had begun. The Navy had less than 48 hours before the Ocean Spirit became a floating grave. The world didn't know it yet, but an operation was already in motion, one that would make history. At 0300 hours on the second night of the hijacking, the Ocean Spirit was no longer moving under its own power. The engines had been shut down, and the ship floated in silence under a moonless sky. The hijackers had full control. They called themselves the Crimson Vipers, but to the terrified passengers, they were ghosts with guns. The passengers had been divided into 3 groups and locked inside separate dining halls on the lower decks. The hijackers used the ship's internal cameras to monitor them. Anyone who tried to move or speak too loudly was met with a rifle butt or worse. Fear spread fast. Captain Rajiv Menon and his officers were kept on the bridge under guard. Fareed, the leader, demanded to use the ship's satellite radio, but the U.S. Navy had already jammed most frequencies. That only made him angrier. He shouted in Arabic, breaking equipment in frustration. He wanted a signal strong enough to reach the world. By dawn, the temperature inside the ship rose sharply. Food was running out. Water was limited. Children began to cry. The hijackers fired warning shots into the ceiling to keep people quiet. No one slept. At 800 hours, 200 miles away, aboard the USS Roosevelt, the command center was fully operational. Rear Admiral Greer and his team had mapped out every possibility. A reconnaissance drone, flying at 60,000 feet, had finally spotted the ship drifting near a small archipelago known as the Lakshmi Reefs, a cluster of uninhabited rocks in the middle of nowhere. The reefs were shallow, dangerous, and perfect for hiding. Greer knew the risks. The hijackers could plant explosives or mines under the ship. A single wrong move could destroy the vessel. The clock was ticking. Intelligence suggested that Fareed planned to release a live broadcast by 1800 hours that day. At 0930 hours, the U.S. Navy confirmed satellite images of armed men moving across the deck. There were at least 20 of them. They had heavy weapons, likely Chinese-made Type 56 rifles, some grenade launchers, and shoulder-fired missiles. Not typical pirate gear. This was a professional group, trained and coordinated. The U.S. government had to make a decision. Negotiation was attempted through an encrypted frequency. A voice answered. Deep, calm, emotionless. It was Fareed. He said, "You leave these waters, or we make history." Then he cut the line. At 1000 hours, the Pentagon authorized Operation Silent Rescue. The mission: infiltrate the Ocean Spirit, neutralize all hostile forces, and extract every hostage alive. No civilian casualties, no international incident. By 1100 hours, SEAL Team 6 was briefed aboard the USS Eisenhower, 16 men, specialists in maritime hostage recovery. They studied the ship's schematics, known from its construction in Italy a decade earlier. They practiced room entries on a replica built inside the carrier's hangar. Every second counted. Meanwhile, inside the ship, fear turned to despair. A few passengers tried to escape through maintenance shafts but were caught. Farid ordered one of them to be tied to a railing on the deck, as a warning. His men filmed it. They wanted the world to see what would happen if anyone interfered. At 1500 hours, the U.S. Navy confirmed via drone feed that the hijackers were rigging explosive vests. Each major section of the ship had been wired with detonators. The rescue now carried a new threat. One mistake, and the entire ship could blow apart. Rear Admiral Greer and his intelligence chief came up with a new plan. Instead of boarding during daylight, they would strike under total darkness. They waited for sunset. At 19:15 hours, as the sky turned black, two MH-60R Seahawk helicopters lifted off from the Eisenhower, carrying SEALs armed with suppressed rifles, breaching tools, and night vision. The plan was precise. One team would land on the aft deck to secure the engine room. The second team would fast rope onto the bridge. A third would approach from the water using inflatable boats to reach the lower decks. At 19:22 hours, the first SEAL team made contact with the ship's hull. The waves were rough, the current strong, but the men moved like shadows. The noise of the sea masked their engines. By 19:30, they were on board. Inside, the hijackers were distracted. They believed no one could find them. They were wrong. At 19:35 hours, the first breach began. Suppressed gunfire. Quick, controlled bursts. Two hijackers down before they could react. The SEALs moved room to room, clearing each section in less than 20 seconds. Their communication was silent, only hand signals and short radio bursts. On the bridge, Farid heard the commotion and realized the Navy had arrived. He shouted for his men to trigger the detonators, but the jamming signal from the Roosevelt blocked every frequency. His devices were useless. By 19:45 hours, the SEALs had secured 2 of the 3 hostage areas. Panic spread among the hijackers. Some surrendered. Others fought until they were shot. One detonator went off, causing a small explosion in the cargo area, but the ship held. At 19:52 hours, SEAL Team Leader Commander James Holbrook reached the bridge. Farid was waiting with his rifle aimed at the captain. The standoff lasted 30 seconds, then a single shot. Farid fell. By 2000 hours, the U.S. Navy had full control of the Ocean Spirit. 5 hijackers were dead, 8 captured, and the rest fled into the sea. The passengers were alive, shaken, but breathing. For the SEALs, the mission was over. For the world, it had just begun. The rescue was about to expose a network much larger than anyone expected. Every rescue mission at sea is a mix of science, timing, and controlled chaos. Operation Silent Rescue was no different. What made it remarkable was how it unfolded under total secrecy. 500 lives depending on decisions measured in seconds. Rear Admiral Greer's team aboard the USS Roosevelt had only a small window to act. The Ocean Spirit was drifting near the Lakshmi Reefs, an area known for shallow waters and radar interference. That meant large ships couldn't get too close. One wrong maneuver, and the Roosevelt could run aground. The U.S. Navy needed precision, and that's what they built the operation around. The mission's nerve center was the Combat Information Center, CIC, on the Roosevelt. Inside, screens displayed real-time feeds from drones, satellites, and infrared sensors. Operators tracked every heat signature and sound within 10 nautical miles of the Ocean Spirit. Each dot on the radar represented a possible threat, or a possible hostage. At 1600 hours, the Roosevelt's radar detected at least 8 small boats circling the hijacked ship. They were likely acting as guards, forming an outer defense ring. These vessels carried mounted machine guns and short-range missiles. Direct engagement would risk the hostages. The solution came in the form of stealth. Navy SEALs used a low-visibility insertion method known as underwater approach. They deployed from a dry deck shelter attached to a nearby submarine, the USS North Dakota. Using SEAL delivery vehicles, Small electric submarines designed for silent movement, the teams could reach within 300 meters of the target without detection. From there, they surfaced, inflated combat rafts, and moved in. The air component was equally complex. The Eisenhower's flight deck launched two MH-60R Seahawk helicopters configured for night operations. Each carried 4 SEALs and 1 Navy rescue diver. The Seahawks flew at just 100 feet above sea level to avoid radar detection, using thermal masking to stay invisible to infrared sensors. Communications were handled through Link 16, a secure military data network allowing real-time sharing between aircraft, ships, and ground forces. To prevent hijackers from detecting their radio chatter, the SEALs switched to burst transmission mode, sending encrypted signals in split-second bursts before going silent again. Meanwhile, cyber teams on the Roosevelt worked to neutralize the hijackers' communication. They jammed all known maritime frequencies using ANSLQ-32 electronic warfare suites, effectively cutting off the ship from outside contact. This ensured that the hijackers could not trigger remote detonations or upload their broadcast message. Every SEAL was equipped with MP-7A1 submachine guns, fitted with suppressors, infrared lasers, and miniature cameras feeding live video back to command. Their armor was light. They needed speed over protection. The SEAL's rule was clear: slow is smooth, smooth is fast. The breaching operation itself followed a classic multi-entry strategy, divided into 3 phases. Phase 1, establish visual and acoustic dominance, meaning control the ship's lighting and sound. Power cables were cut, plunging the ship into darkness. Phase 2, secure the engine room and prevent scuttling. If the hijackers tried to sink the vessel, the engineers would keep the propulsion locked. Phase 3, locate, isolate, and neutralize hostiles while guiding civilians to safety zones. Every movement was tracked by time. At 1918 hours, underwater sonar confirmed the SEAL teams had attached magnetic climbing grips to the ship's hull. At 1923 hours, thermal scans showed the hijackers moving toward the upper decks, possibly reacting to engine noise. At 1930 hours, the first breach took place on Deck 4. 2 guards were neutralized in less than 6 seconds. The success depended not just on courage, but on training. Each SEAL operator had spent months rehearsing similar scenarios using full-scale ship mock-ups. They drilled for room clearing, hostage movement, and explosive disposal. The average SEAL spends over 300 days a year training for missions like this. But technology played its part, too. The Roosevelt used P-8A Poseidon reconnaissance aircraft flying at 41,000 feet to provide wide-area surveillance. The Poseidon's advanced sensors could detect metallic objects underwater, helping identify if mines were planted around the ship. It found 4. The Navy then deployed small Mark 18 Mod 2 underwater drones to disable those mines using directed charges. At 1945 hours, as SEALs advanced, the Roosevelt launched decoy signals, false radar signatures simulating incoming ships. This distracted the hijackers' lookout teams, who started firing into the dark ocean, thinking they were under attack. That was the moment SEAL Team Bravo entered the bridge. The entire engagement lasted just 27 minutes. 27 minutes to clear a vessel the size of 2 football fields. 27 minutes that separated life and death for 500 people. Of those 27 minutes, only 11 were active firefights. The rest were silent moves, signal confirmations, and hostage extractions. Precision won the night. By 2002 hours, the Ocean Spirit was fully secured. The ship's power was restored, and emergency medical teams arrived by helicopter. The hostages were given oxygen masks, water, and thermal blankets. Many were in shock. After the operation, the Navy analyzed every second of the mission. The debrief showed 0 civilian casualties, a near-impossible outcome in maritime hostage rescues. The SEALs credited their success to discipline, communication, and teamwork. Admiral Greer called it the most accurate execution of coordinated maritime rescue in the 21st century. Later, Intelligence confirmed that the Crimson Vipers were not acting alone. They were funded by an international weapons network, stretching from Eastern Europe to the Gulf. Their real goal had been to test U.S. naval response times. They wanted to see how fast America could react to a sea-based hostage crisis. They got their answer, and it was faster than they ever imagined. The operation proved a larger truth. Even in the modern era of drones and cyber warfare, human skill and courage remain the Navy's sharpest weapons. Machines can track and jam, but it's people who pull the trigger, make the call, and carry the burden. The sea was quiet again, but that silence carried the sound of victory and the memory of what almost was lost. By 20-30 hours, the Ocean Spirit was under full U.S. Navy control. The rescue operation had taken just under 40 minutes from the first breach to securing the bridge. Every hostage was accounted for, 500 people, including children, elderly passengers, and crew. Only minor injuries were reported: cuts, bruises, and shock. Remarkably, there were no civilian fatalities. The hijackers' plan had failed completely. Farid, the leader, was neutralized on the bridge. Several of his men surrendered, while a few attempted to flee into the water. Navy personnel captured 8 alive. The remaining 5 were confirmed deceased from firefights or accidental detonations of their own explosives. The ship sustained minimal structural damage. A small fire in the cargo hold was quickly contained by the SEALs and Navy firefighters. Once the hostages were secured, the Navy deployed MH-60 helicopters to lift medical teams and evacuate those in critical condition. The Ocean Spirit's captain,